Hey, how's everybody doing there? My name is Tom Nyback. This is 365 Days Towards Racial Change. Welcome back to the program as we move this project along. Looks like I'll be able to knock out a good chunk of these before school starts. Hopefully, we'll be able to continue. I'd like to finish these, oh, in a short amount of time. How you doing? We've been on quite a journey. We're wrapping up Uncle Tom's Cabin. I wonder what your feelings about the nation are. What you know? How do you know? Well, let me share my feelings. I'm disillusioned, impacted, and then in a very profound way. You're probably going to hear this next 3 or 4 videos as we wrap up Uncle Tom's Cabin and more. Yeah, I'm sure. But this is where I live. This is where Uh, I was taught so many great and profound things about America, but when you put America's feet, uh, it's societal feet, it's visionary feet to the fire on the purity of the nation's intentions, vision of the founding fathers, framers, and all this history and stuff. You find America just deficient. And not only deficient, like America as a nation has never found its own way to implement its own intentions towards the human race. I bet, there are founding fathers, at least some of them. I'm going to try to be an advocate here and not say that all the uh, eggs were bad. But I'm sure there was some in the minority, I will say that much, who felt like this could be the nation of the world. This could be the nation where our differences maybe would be along lines of sex, right? Even along the lines of maybe economics, intellect, right? But not skin color. I'm sure some of them, and maybe if we look at James Madison's notes from Philadelphia, 1787, there's tension in the room um, around that issue. It's underneath, as as uh, as I've read those notes. I obviously got to read a whole lot of other material, but for you to come out on the other side with this decision to marginalize and disadvantage people, and for white folks to sit on top of this um, American ideal, uh, you got to be a special kind of person to come out with that kind of thinking in that way. You've never you're 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 addressing all these things about potentates and monarchs across on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, but in your heart, you're wishing you were in that exact space. You've renamed a lot of things president, um, Congress instead of Parliament, and but that you find them functioning in the same way. You make term limits on these people, but as history plays out, you got people sitting in positions for lifetimes, I don't think that's the idea. That's not the American idea. Well, one of the things that would let's put race aside. I'm seeing another issue has arisen as I'm looking at lifetime appointments in the government. Well, you're not getting the you're not getting the representation of the people. Now you are restricting. You're using time as another tool to restrict change, things like that. And you're going to hear me talk about the obsolescence of the Constitution because of that. The Constitution may have been a document, but you'll notice now the year 2019, as this year is wrapping up, I've noticed that the document isn't keeping up with the needs of the nation in the way it's configured. Maybe if we had stuck to it um, by the letter, which would mean we probably wouldn't need all these amendments and stuff like that. I mean, well, what a farce! You're having these amendments because you have not initially uh, gone with your conscious as far as treating people right, all people right, but you need amendments. You need women to vote, black people to vote, all these disadvantaged, marginalized groups voting, immigration and stuff. Uh, oh boy, America, America. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I'm a citizen, but this exercise, we're at day 287, um, has really been an eye opener. Very disappointed. You know, it's up there with Darth Vader and saying, telling Luke he's the father, right? I mean, this all powerful man in black is my father. Uh, Thank you, America. Black folk, where are you at? Are you waking up? Are you doing your own study research? Find stuff to contradict what I'm saying. You find out that uh, on I'm on an extreme position politically, socially, and all this. Please, to bring me back, uh, you know, to settle for um, being like, drugs on the streets is as purely accidental, phenomena in America. Crime, guns on the streets, and how minority communities are targeted, and all of it. Bring me back to so I can socially doze again and uh, be content and docile, thinking that uh, America's dysfunction, social ills, its targeted oppressions are boy, these are just accidental things, social phenomenon in America. But it's such an accident that power resides and rests um, where the people where they have a commonality of skin color, and skin color is um, you can look at lines of skin color as far as an oppressed, marginalized group in America. Please, whatever um, drug out there is to put me back asleep and under, so I can undergo some kind of mental surgery to undo this disillusionment that I'm under, right? If you're a black person and you are um, in my economic bracket, facing my challenges, recovering from partaking of some of America's worst kinds of dysfunction, and you disagree with me, look, we should have a debate. I need to be convinced that I've gone awry with this year-long or 365-day study of myself, America, and the configuration, um, you know, that demonstrate to me that there are no disadvantages and that everybody has an equal shot at American pie. Yeah, I'd love to hear that conversation. How's your financial life? And that's for everybody. Because money is going to represent your ability to move and maneuver, find rest, security, right? Your means, your pleasure. I went on vacation months ago, made some financial errors and mistakes and judgment, taking me forever to recover. In between jobs during a semester, that 2 weeks off of jobs really has me scrambling. So what's up with you, America? Uh, Especially black folks or those disadvantaged. How do you get along? What's your um, financial life like? Do you get it and spend it? Are you putting any aside? You know, we're a lot of products coming out where you can get quick loans and where you can um, invest and whatnot. Are you taking advantage of some of those opportunities? Do you know how? Things like that. Do you have your ears open for these kind of opportunities? I'm not much of the entrepreneurial master. Got desires, uh, but I've got younger family members that are light years ahead of me on this issue of money. But I know we got to do something. A big part of our success, if black folks ever turn it around, is going one of the pillars of our success is going to be finances and how we get along. I'm inspired to do this work by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. Tomorrow, or the next day, we're going to be looking at some of his stuff, but we're finishing up chapter 44 of Uncle Tom's Cabin. We're going to get to that in a moment. But Dr. Claude Anderson is the one who inspired me to do this work in the first place. You find a lot of his stuff in previous videos. You can find him here on YouTube. I've read 3 of his works, A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask, Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power, and Economic Justice, and Dr. Anderson's National Plan to Empower Black America, Powernomics. You can find Dr. Anderson at powernomics.com. Behind me, you'll see the hashtag #US2 symbol. You go there, you'll find black women having their resources as a community, helping one another, supporting one another. Very, very good place to be if you're a black female, especially. Check out Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, kind of a black Facebook experience. And Dr. Boyce Watkins has, if you're an entrepreneur and whatnot, he's got the Black Business School. You go check him out. And like I said, we are in Uncle Tom's Cabin, chapter 44, The Liberator. today. George is heavy-hearted, right? He's just buried. Not to George, young George Shelby. It's not. He didn't bury a slave. You know, that he missed an opportunity to redeem from Simon Legree, who's beaten Tom to death and tortured Tom. But George Shelby feels like he's buried a friend. His heart's heavy. He sends a note ahead of him back to the Shelby plantation, saying that he'll be home in another couple days. He needs to think and digest and get his head around this event that just happened. He's of the mind, and remember, this is Harriet Beecher Stowe. She's got about a dozen characters in here in this story with different minds. So she created the Legree character. She created Ophelia, Topsy, uh, you know, uh, Prue, other elements, bounty hunters and things like that. These are all pigmentations of her imagination. Uh, but we're going to talk more about what informs her to be in that space. So young George Shelby character has grown. It's about 5 years have elapsed between Tom's departure, all the drama, and Tom's death, and now George is heading home. He sends a note, "Mom, I'll be home in a few days." Mrs. Shelby is, trying to figure it all out. I believe Mr. Shelby Sr. has died. He's heavy-hearted. In the letters, no word about Tom. He left to find Tom. So you get a letter, you're going to expect some mention about Tom. No, nothing about Tom. Um, George finally arrives one evening. The plantation is very optimistic, and they have no idea what has happened. But I guess it's almost merciful that the letter, he's man enough to own it, right? That he's going to deliver this very important information in person. And he's got, but in the meantime, on his way back up to Kentucky, he's making some decisions. He's making some deliberations. I think he is thinking about the institution. He doesn't buy the slaves from Legree's plantation because buying and trading in flesh, bringing somebody from one side, one bad plantation to a good plantation is not the answer for the problem. The problem is systemic. And I believe George, in Harriet Stowe's mind, is complicated. He's complicated enough to say, how do I strike at the institution and not just keep peddling flesh? He's got that on his mind as he's going up. So he's got a lot to meditate on. Chloe, especially this evening, they feel he's coming. She's done her best cooking. She's got the money on the table next to Tom's place where Tom is going to sit. She's cooked Tom's favorite meal. Right? It's for Tom. I bet even the white folks ain't even going to try to exercise any control now because she is in the throes of the vision of seeing her husband after 5 long years. And, they hear either like a buckboard, a wagon, horses coming up the lane, but they see young George is alone. Wow, okay, all right, what's going on? This is not a good initial sign, right? You get the portents of bad news. Sometimes I don't know if it's good or bad that you get that preparation phenomenon. Okay, it's not there. He's not in the right place. She's not present. Um, some of my items are missing. I remember I've had various times living in places that have been broken into. Right, you come home, the door's open, and it's dark inside. Okay, something's not right. George arrives alone. He hugs his mother. The news gets out. Not only could he not retrieve Tom, but Tom is dead. The weight of that comes down. Chloe is crushed. You know, she took 5 years uh, off. I wanted you to get this 5 years because at the height of slavery, the value of slavery was up to $1,800. And we did some math way before when Chloe first got the opportunity to go do some baking in, I think, Louisville. And so she's saving and saving. It took her 5 years to get this between $1,500 and $1,800 to get her husband back. And her her disappointment, her disillusionment is complicated because she engaged the system. She sees this system work for white people all the time. Not slavery, of course, but buying chickens, horses, property, all this. You get your money and you get this. It works. She believes this is her education of what she's been taught. This is her expectation, and the system just breaks down utterly. Right, and I'm I'm particular about this moment because these are the kind of moments that drove me to this project. Time after time, I'm reaching out because non-black people are having success and exactly what I'm putting my hand to. Yet I'm getting burned. I'm getting my hand caught in the machine, so to speak. Chloe is sure about it. Her community encourages her in it. The man that she's hired out to, this baker from way back, is like, whatever. I'm going to give you this $5 a week, or forget what the wage was. Um, you know, and over 5 years, right? And this is 5 years of Chloe doing that work, raising kids, doing her duties in the Shelby house. 5 non-stop years. And you tell me my husband's dead. Get that. Get that. And think about your identity, whoever you are. White woman, black man, white man. I'm sure we can find some aspect of life where we see a group having success and you are being disadvantaged if you're gay or whatever. Like, boy, that really works for that community group. When I I'm doing the exact same thing, we're same rules, and I'm being marginalized, disadvantaged, discriminated against. Think about that. I'm going to drive that home on you. She's disillusioned, and the bills are on the table. That $1,800. She just says, y'all, you keep it because this is not real for me anyway. It doesn't work for me. You guys can. This is obviously some more white privilege happening. Um, you just took my man, killed him over 5 years. That's that's got to be devastating. A month later, young George gathers the plantation. He's got a stack of papers in his hands. He says, as of this moment, everybody's free. He says, you're free. And we find similar gestures in history. I just sat down with one of the fans here, and he's going through the signers of the Declaration of Independence. And some of those guys, I think it's only two or three, let their slaves go at their death, and stuff like that. So, and I'm sure it's common in, we're going to talk even a day or two about this, but it's a gesture many slave masters did. Probably the further north you got, the more prevalent it was. But he encourages the hands to stay. And if you remember when we talking about some of the discussions between Ophelia and St. Clair, very philosophical area of Uncle Tom's Cabin. One issue that came up in their discussions was the idea you can't just, freeing the slaves doesn't mean you just let them go out on the street, because it's a white system, just like we just talked about with Chloe. It's a white system for white people, created by whites, and all that. I used to say this a lot in the course of this 365 days, where you can't just let them go, because in America's system, black people are slaves, and you just don't go out and participate. Right? Now, that's my indictment against America. You know, um, so much of the world. How much of the world today looks at America as a place where you're going to get a fair handshake? Everybody gets a fair handshake, whether they're from Europe, someplace up north, or from Africa, from an African nation. Do they look at America as this place where we have a constitution, and they have a constitution or equality and stuff? It's just not so in America. It doesn't work like that. So he says, I know you're free. You're free now, and yeah, you can go, but I'm offering you work here to stay here. We'll find a way. Hopefully, George. The book kind of ends there, but hopefully, in our Disneyland mind, he's going to pay them living wages and stuff like that. That's my hope. We don't know. The story doesn't tell us, but at least they can stay, work, and participate. And he's saying, look, I'm going to educate you about how to participate out there in white society. And he says, whenever you pass Tom's cabin, remember Tom every time, because George is like, Tom really touched my life. George is the Liberator, chapter 44. Um, so that's, we're going to talk more, but get ready to hear a lot about me have a lot of criticism about America and its treatment. Right, this book has given us a lot of talking points, and there's not a lot America can say in defense of itself, in what it's created, what it's always been, how it has not, how it's never lived up to its ideal idea of what America could be like. I would argue that it's never been that. We got too many periods in history with social unrest, change, um, because our Constitution, our founding documents, founding fathers never paved the way for equal participation of all Americans. I'm Thomas Nyback. I'm not going to hold you hostage. I'm out of time. But that's day 287, 365 days towards racial change. We're running the home stretch now. Hang in there with us. We are almost there. Bye-bye. I'll see you next time.